So it's very easy to identify and point out other people's weaknesses and faults and bad qualities. But that is actually totally irrelevant for our own Dharma practice. What we need to do is focus on our own weaknesses and errors and bad qualities and do something about them, because we have that potential to change ourselves. So being a monastic involves a certain degree of honesty with ourselves, transparency, willing to own our own stuff and to admit to ourselves and others certain qualities we have that are not so desirable. And in doing so, to not feel ashamed. Okay, that doesn't mean we condone those qualities and say they're okay, but we don't go to the other extreme and shame ourselves and criticize ourselves or tell ourselves we're no good. Okay? It's just a thing of noticing what is there and abandoning the judgment about it. We can know, for example, we can see that a flower is blooming, and we can admire a freshly bloomed flower. We can say another flower is old and needs to be discarded. But that doesn't mean that, we judge one flower. It's just, this is what this one is, this is what that one is. We deal with it appropriately without judgment. So it's the same way when working with ourselves. Okay, so not only being able to see things in ourselves with a non-judgmental attitude, but also to have a certain sense of humor about them so that we don't take ourselves so terribly seriously. Okay, so to be able to laugh at our mistakes, laugh at our wrong ways of thinking. And again, we can laugh at ourselves without the judgment of, I'm bad, I'm stupid, I'm foolish. Okay, so there's this thing of learning to see the world without judging everything. So let's try to do this as much as we can. And I think it will open our minds and hearts so that we can really progress on the path without tying a weight to our own feet. So let's generate the bodhicitta, an attitude that doesn't judge ourselves or judge other living beings, but instead wants the best for ourselves and for them. The best being full awakening, and so working towards that end. So I was thinking about this thing of non-judging, and I started it out with, how we often tend to look at other people and so-and-so did this or so-and-so didn't do that. And immediately the mind goes to a judgment. That's good, that's bad, they're stupid. There immediately goes to judgment. And actually, to just be able to look and say, someone did this, someone said that, and leave it at that. Yeah, someone said these words, someone did this, or someone didn't do that. And that's just the reality of what happened. There's no need to go into moral judgment. Someone's good, someone's bad, someone's stupid. They should know better, they ought not to do that, blah, blah, blah. You know how we usually are. Just, okay, they said that, that's it. Without, and just think how much more peaceful your mind would be on a daily basis if you didn't have all those judgments. If you could just say, this happened, that's it. Okay. So the way we view it now, it's as if those judgments inhere in the situation or in the person. As if that person's bad, as if, the badness dwells inside of them and we're seeing what's there. There's no badness in the other person. There's no stupidity in the other person. Okay? They just did what they did. Yeah? So not to put all that stuff there. So to practice that with other people, because it's quite easy to see how we go into judgment with other people. And then to switch it to ourselves too. Yeah? To really be able to say, okay, I said that. Yeah. I wish I hadn't. But I said it, and then just stop there instead of, oh, what a lousy person I am. Nobody's going to like me. I failed again. Look what I've done. Blah, 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 blah. All that self-centered blaming. Okay? And just, there's no need for it, Again, it's not like those judgments exist, those qualities that the judgments are projecting exist inside of us. It's just we said something, we did something, and we wish we hadn't. Yeah. And we're going to take care of it and figure out why we did it and see, practice mind training and, how else we can view the situation if it came up again so that we don't do the same thing. But to abandon all that self-judgment. Yeah. So I know it's as difficult, more difficult than separating from your smartphone. Yeah. When people come here and we tell them they have to give up their phone for the duration of the retreat, it's like we're asking them to cut off their hand. Their phone is a part of them. Well, we look at all this self-shaming in the same way. It's just, all these things are part of me. How can you ask me to give up my self-shaming? And I even talked to one man. He was here for an EML many years ago. He was an Iraqi war vet. And oh man, did he have a lot of this self-criticism. And when I pointed it out to him, he said, if I don't do this, then I won't work to change myself. I won't work to do better. There was a fear that if I don't like trash myself, I won't have any motivation to do better. And I said, that's not going to motivate you to do better. The self-trashing keeps us stuck, going around in the same circle. Okay, because we put our energy into telling ourselves how bad we are, and then we start believing we're bad, and then, of course, a bad person can never change. Yeah? So that kind of self-talk is just, it isn't, we don't need to talk that way to ourselves to motivate ourselves. Yeah? And this is why I think it's so important to have a sense of humor and, say, okay, look what I did, another stupidagio, and be able to laugh at it a little bit. How our afflictions got the better of us for, a time, and not just ignore it, but go back and try and understand the situation, prevent it from happening, do some purification, make amends. Yeah. But we can do all of that without this, maybe when we dream of monsters, the monsters we're dreaming of are our own self-criticism. You're worthless. Yeah. You gonna do another one of the things? I asked people one time to draw or make or do something, how they saw themselves, how they criticized themselves. So Venerable Chuni did this beautiful one. She used potatoes, which we don't do anymore because then we can't eat them. Unless, did you eat them afterwards? Yeah, we shouldn't. Yeah, we don't want to use food as artwork, because many people don't have enough food. But she did use potato, and she made this very ugly thing. Yeah, and you said you felt quite good doing it and putting it out there. She left it on the dining room table for all of us to see. Yeah, and that kind of thing could be quite liberating. It's like, okay, here's my internal monster. I'll put him out there. We can all laugh. And what's the big deal? Okay, so that's really this is quite an important thing for, just being a healthy human being, but also for practicing the path. Yeah, because we have to be able to see our own potential and our own goodness in order to make headway on the path. Yeah, or to put it in Lama Yeshe's language, we got to drop the poor quality view. Yeah, so that we can go ahead. Okay. So to continue where we left off before, I was talking about some of the core elements of the new lifestyle when you ordain. So I talked about the first one, that's celibacy. We pretty much finished that, but I was reading that in Pennsylvania, what do you call it? What do you call it? You know what I'm talking about?
You mean archdiocese?
Yeah, but the thing that it wasn't a prosecutor. It was when they have a group of citizens come together and investigate something.
Class action?
What?
Class action?
No, anyway. It'll come to me.
Grand jury?
Oh yeah, grand jury. That's it. Thank you. So that'll save me having to remember it in the middle of my next meditation session. So they had a grand jury investigation, and they found that in 6 dioceses in Pennsylvania, over 7 decades, over 1,000 children had been sexually abused in the Catholic Church. At least they had identified 1,000. There's probably more. That's horrific. And they really saw, not only the people abusing the children, but how it was covered up in the institution and ignored in the institution.
And law enforcement as well.
Yeah. Well, they didn't contact law enforcement, it said. Or did they?
There were some situations where the law enforcement did not intervene.
Where they called the police and the police didn't act on it. Oh, goodness. So, so when I was talking the other day about, Sangha disharmony and things like that, when people aren't getting along, we don't talk to the lay people about it. That's things like the spatula, the spatula and the toilet paper. Things like this that are clearly illegal, and clearly damaging, then obviously, you have to contact the authorities. And okay, your religious institution gets damaged, the reputation, which is so often why they avoid it. But it has to happen in order to avoid harming other people. Yeah, so just to make that clear, what we contact the authorities for and the level of stuff that we don't talk to lay people about, So doesn't get along with so-and-so because this one put, that kind of stuff. That doesn't go to the lay people, but, money, embezzling money, sexual misconduct, that does, If somebody commits a parajika, that's something the Sangha handles because that doesn't, it's not illegal in the society to have sex. They don't care. So, that's something the Sangha handles through the Sangha's internal processes. And, that person is not in communion with the Sangha. Okay, is that clear? Okay, so, this is why we all have to be very vigilant, Okay, then, another core element is living from donations given by others who have faith and not working for a living. So this is a big switch, a big change from lay life, because it really makes us dependent on others in a very obvious way. And it helps us not take things for granted, although it's so easy. I find it very easy to take food for granted. It appears on the table every day. Just like magic, it's there, and we do the food offering prayer, when people come and offer, but the food just magically appears. And I have to constantly remind myself, these people who donate food, they're working at least 9 to 5, very often more than an 8-hour day. They have to support their families, but out of the goodness of their hearts, they want to feed us. And, it's something to continually remind ourselves about, so that we experience their kindness and we're aware that our way of repaying their kindness is through our practice and through benefiting them, through being able to teach or counsel or lead meditations or if we start a soup kitchen or actually, what we need to have is we get so many lost young men who want to come here and ordain. I'm not talking about you. You're a found young man. But boy, I mean, we get kids, just you can see their lives are completely, they're lost, totally lost. And they want to come here and ordain, and they don't know anything about Buddhism. So that, I keep thinking, but we can't, what are they going to do out here? But, that this is a group of people in society that really needs more attention from society, which I think is why youth emergency services is quite important. Yeah. Okay. But, that it's this reciprocal relationship, what they call an economy of generosity. Yeah. And so we give, everybody else gives. That way, everybody creates merit, And if we charge and, like that, then it just becomes payment and there's no merit involved. Okay, so there's a number of things. By living on donation and not getting a salary, it hits you in a number of ways. Okay, so it challenges us to make everything we do an offering that we do with a good motivation, not with a motivation like I have to do it, which is the motivation people usually go to work with, but to consciously change our motivation and, what I'm doing is an offering. It also makes us redefine what success is, because in many of our families, success was, bringing home a good salary. And that's how you got approval from your family. That's how you competed with your siblings. That's how you got attention or whatever it is. And so it's a completely different way of what does success mean? It doesn't mean having a lot of money in the bank, as we've been conditioned to think. It doesn't mean having a nice house. It doesn't mean all these other things that we're told. Yeah. It also means that, depending on others like this, it also means we can't do our own trip. We can't just take off and do what we want, because the money is very obviously coming from other people who are giving it to us because they have faith in the Dharma. So how can you take money that people gave you because they have faith in the Dharma and use it, to go to a Broadway show, or use it, to do any number of the kinds of things people ordinarily do? Yeah, because they're giving us the money because they have faith in the Sangha. So we have to use the money in a way that, if the lay people knew that we were spending their money that way, that they would think, oh, that's good, instead of, oh, I worked so hard and gave them money and now they're going off and, buying their own charter jet or something, or, buying who knows what. Yeah. But, to have some awareness of that. And it also stops us from this thing of, oh, I saw this really beautiful whatever, online, on the billboard, in the magazine. I want to go and get it. This impulsive kind of shopping that people often do. They see something nice and, oh, gotta order it, gotta get it. Okay? Because, as Sangha members, we don't, we have a simple lifestyle. We don't need a lot of things. Yeah. They don't have our style clothing on the web. Yeah. So it's impossible to order it. We don't really need, 15 winter jackets or 30 pairs of shoes or, 10 hats or whatever. So to really keep what we have to a minimum and, not not have this impulsive buying. Yeah. And now this can be dangerous because you can buy on web without going to the shopping center. Yeah. So it's easy for monastic. Oh, there's a nice thing on web, and I was just, web shopping and this and that. And, I can get that. I can get that. And then it gets delivered to the Abbey in a brown box. Nobody knows that it's a personal thing. They all think it's something for the Abbey. No. Okay, so to really look at that thing that wants to buy, even for the Abbey, we can get into it. It's like, well, we need this new piece of kitchen equipment, and we need, what was it? The mops. Yeah. There are reasons for getting new mops. Yes, it would be nice to have a bucket. Yeah. But a bucket, we don't need 5 buckets, okay? So, also as a community, doing this, okay? Also, this whole way of, not having our own money and stuff and being a monastic, you're allowed to have 13 goods, 13 things you consider your own. Okay, so in the case of monks, 3 robes. In the case of nuns, 5 robes. You can have a needle and thread. You can have a strainer to filter the insects out of the water before you drink it. You can have a bathing cloth that you put on before you go bathe in, the pond down there. Okay, so there's 13 articles that you can call your own, and the rest are to belong to the community. Okay, and I think that's maybe we can take out, change out some of those 13 items, but this is why. We switch rooms every year, which is, oh my goodness, people go through so much emotion changing rooms every year, because you have to move out of, you've got your room, your empire set up in a certain way and, just perfect. And then you have to move, into somebody else's room that is not your room and, reestablish your empire and you have to use the blankets that they use instead of your blankets, because we don't bring our blankets with us, They do things behind my back and don't tell me about it.
Anyways.
You take your blankets with you. Wait, everybody's talking at once.
Okay, remember the one year when we washed all the blankets and it was so crazy, so much water use, and the septic system was being strained and everything.
Uh-huh.
We decided it was just ridiculous. So it was easier for everybody to take all their bedding with them. Then people just wash things during the year, and it saves all kinds of problems. And we decided this as a group with you. I'm your conscious speaking.
Okay. Funny, there's things that I've told you people that you don't remember.
This is important.
Huh?
This is important.
This is important. That's why you did it behind my back. Okay, so check the policy manual. Okay, what's the next point? The next point was we lose possessiveness, thinking this is mine, except it's my blankets, my sheets, my mattress, my this, my that. You gave up your strainers. Oh, I don't think you had strainers to start with, did you? Okay. So anyway, supposedly, what's supposed to happen when you're a monastic is you work at giving up this sense of this is mine, okay, and you develop contentment, and you take what has been offered to you, and you're satisfied with that. Then the next thing that changes when you become a monastic is simplicity of lifestyle. So this in what this means is that you can't be bought or bullied by career offers, because you know how people are in society. You're working at one job, somebody offers you another job with more money, or somebody where you're working bullies you to do this or that or the other thing. And we're totally free of all of that because we don't work a job for a career. Okay. Now, that also means that you don't pay into Medicare. Yeah, you don't pay into Social Security. So this is something, that we have to think about a lot for the people who ordain when they're young. Some of the people ordain when they're older. They have, they will receive, substantial Social Security. People like me. So, okay, but you have that total freedom during your life to practice the Dharma without, because you're a renunciate, then you can't be trapped by these kinds of things. But like I've been trying to say, if you ordain in the Tibetan tradition, because it is not a given that you are taken care of by your teacher, the Vinaya stipulates that if you ordain somebody, you need to provide them with the requisites to stay alive. The Tibetan monks do not do that towards their Western disciples, because they're the primary people that they send their offerings back to are the monks in India. So, if you ordain, then you have to be aware of that kind of thing, depending upon who your teacher is. I mean, here people get room and board, and and if you don't have money for medical, the Abbey pays for your medical and so on. But if you ordain in other places, you really have to be quite careful with that, because otherwise, you could, you wind up having to go work or do something. Yeah. Simplicity of lifestyle also helps us to differentiate between needs and wants. What do I really need to stay alive? And what do I want because it's better quality than what I have? Or what do I want because it looks really nice? Or, stuff like this. And so also that involves, not getting shoes or backpacks or whatever with the idea that this is a social, a status symbol, that, you have really cool shoes, or you have a really cool backpack, or, but to really be content with what we have, and wearing our old Sravasti Abbey cap that's really faded and bleached with all the stuff you use for the knapweed, and Yes, I like your old hat. It's very charming. No, it's very good. It indicates you aren't attached to things, unless my generation, we were attached to things like that looked like that. Remember how we had to deliberately get holes in our jeans so we could patch them, and more patches you had, and the nicer looking cloth you used to make your patches. It became quite a status thing, and you would travel, and everybody would look at your jeans and who sewed those patches on. Amazing what we human beings do. Yeah, what we do to get attention. It's quite amazing. Also, simplicity of lifestyle. We learn to share resources. Yeah, so not everybody needs their own X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So, we share the washing machine, we share the kitchen, everything, living together like that, then it simplifies your life in many ways. Yeah. Because you don't need to buy a lot of stuff just for yourself and have this sense of possession. It's mine and like that. Becoming a monastic also involves making different choices about how we spend our time. Okay, so we try and avoid worldly entertainment. So, we don't go to the movies. I mean, I know monastics do go to the movies, but, according to our precepts, we shouldn't be going to movies unless it's something. Documentaries are different because you're learning about different aspects of society, and you need to know about that because people come here from those different aspects of society, and you have to know about them, what they, how to deal with them, how to talk to them and all. But we don't go to the movies for pleasure. Because to be entertained, put it that way. We don't seek entertainment. We don't go to concerts and operas and, all these kinds of things, but really seek some kind of, choose to spend our time, with the Dharma. And I feel very lucky in that regard because the thing that I like to do most in my spare time is walk. And there's no precepts against walking. So, especially when you have a beautiful forest and a garden and everything like that. And I find doing that much more relaxing than what I used to do for entertainment. So, really choosing how we spend our time. Choosing how we relate to the media. And I think this is becoming more and more important now because people are so addicted to their phones and their computers. I read on the internet that, people check their phones on average 150 times a day. They touch their phone on average over 2,500 times a day. Okay, and some of the people in Silicon Valley who, the early people, who started doing all this stuff, are now beginning to see the monster they created for society, and some of them are beginning to speak about that, yeah? So this is why we don't have our own personal phones here, because it is just you just get caught up in it and involved in checking it and looking at everything. And yeah, so, we don't have our own individual Facebook accounts. Yeah. I know this was difficult, presents some difficulty for people to come and live at the Abbey. They want their old friends, they want their family to know what's going on in their life and what they're doing. So can't I just, instead of writing letters, can't I put it on Facebook? It just gets too crazy putting it on Facebook. Also because what people do on Facebook is they're creating an image of themselves that they want people to believe. And what we're trying to do in our practice is undo that image we've created for ourselves. Okay. And to really see that we don't have to look at what all of our friends are doing every single day. I remember one of the EMLs we did some years ago, there were several young people, and the day after EML ended, they all wanted to go and on the computer and look on Facebook to see what their friends have been doing for the last 2.5 weeks, and to put on their Facebook pages about what they were doing. And so we're choosing, we're not going to spend our time like that. And like I said, the Abbey has a Facebook page. We have a Twitter account. I have a Facebook page. I don't look at these things. I don't know how to post stuff. There's one layperson who's very kind, and she takes care of it, and she puts the pictures on and the announcements and all the things of the teachings, and we leave it at that. Yeah. So it's totally possible to live these days without being addicted. Having said that, it's very tempting to get addicted to the computer and to keep checking your email. Okay, and to start emailing, I haven't heard from this friend, I'll email them, I'll email that, So that's why we also here have restrictions on, how often you email friends and family, what kind of, you only go on the web to for Dharma-related things, yeah, or if you have a responsibility in a certain department and that department needs a certain item, you can go on the web and look for it. But aside from that, we're not just trolling, surfing. We read the news, and we have difficulty regulating how much news we read. Yeah, because again, the news is infotainment nowadays. And especially with the Trump administration, it's like, what's the newest? It's like watching a circus. And, what's the newest circus item, in the news today? Yeah. And so it's very tempting to get caught up in all of that stuff, too, and spend a lot of time. So it's something, that as monastics we have to really look out for. And not going to movies, what we're doing is we're stopping seeing violence as entertaining. Yeah? We're refusing to see violence as entertainment. We're refusing to see other people's sexual adventures as entertainment. Because that's what most movies are these days, sex and violence. And we're just saying, I'm not interested in that, I have better things to do in my life. And our precepts, to protect our precepts, we have to avoid seeing those things that spark our attachment, and movies, advertising, that's their purpose, is to spark attachment, to spark anger, to evoke emotion, because that's how they get you to come back and buy stuff. Yeah, so we're saying, we're training our minds, and it's really a mental training of, that's not what my life is about. I don't want to spend my time with this. I don't want to give control of my mind over to people in the advertising industry or in Hollywood or in New York. I want to learn to, transform my own mind and not have the media make me into their puppet. Okay. So I think, being very clear about that. Also, the thing about singing and dancing. Often people come here and, why can't we sing and dance? I listen to classical music, it helps me relax. Really? classical music, there's so many ups and downs and emotion and this and that's going on. And contemporary music, pop music, oh my goodness, you know, that you can feel vibrating in your body, you know, not in a good way. Okay, so also, if you think about it, you know, those of us who like to sing and dance, that's a way to get a lot of attention for yourself by singing and dancing, especially if you're good at it. Okay? And so, in one way, we don't sing and dance because we don't want to use that as a way of, you know, look at me, I'm so good at doing this, I have a beautiful voice, look how well I dance, this kind of stuff. And also, because if you sing and dance, if you go to movies, then when you sit down to meditate, all that stuff's going around in your mind. And this evening, you will hear the extremes perform. But all of us have noted that every time the extremes perform, afterwards, the melodies, it takes a day or two to get out of your mind.
I'm still singing things in my head from the 40th anniversary.
Yeah. So, you know, we do this as a way of having fun, but again, we have to be quite careful with it because those melodies, yeah, they keep going round. Okay, and that becomes, you know, quite a distraction in, you know, in your meditation and in your life. Okay, another thing that changes is instead of living in your own house, where you can arrange things the way you want, where you can manage time the way you want, you're now living in community. And so that involves its own challenges. Okay, so it gives challenges, it gives benefit. I mean, the chief benefit is that people understand what our life is about and what is important to us. And we receive support from the community for our endeavors to transform our mind. You know, so the community members are supporting us in letting go of our jealousy, letting go of our arrogance, letting go of our anger and our self-centeredness. Okay? And so we really receive that help from and support for the community. And also, we give that support to the people we live with. Yeah, it's very important in community life that when you see somebody making progress in a certain thing, that you point it out to them. Yeah, or, you know, we all know what each one of us struggles with, and when you see somebody do something in a new way, where when you know that they have an old habit pattern to do it in another way that doesn't work, and you see them really working hard and changing, you know, then it's so nice to comment on that to somebody and let them know that you're seeing the result of their efforts and supporting people in their practice in this way. Yeah, so very important that we do that. Living in community also involves there's certain etiquette, you know, how you act in the presence of your teacher in different situations, how you relate to seniors, how you relate to juniors. It's important that we respect everybody in the community, whether they're senior to us or junior to us. You know, we have an underlying respect for that person's sincerity in their Dharma practice. Yeah. So there's that respect that just pervades everybody. But then there's certain kind of things that you do, you know, to show respect to people who have been doing it longer than you have. and people that you see as having more qualities than you have. And that can be difficult for us to acknowledge sometimes, when we feel insecure, to acknowledge that there's people in the community who have better qualities, who are better in one thing or another than us. It can be difficult for us, but it's actually very freeing when we can learn to admire their qualities. In the same way as, why do we bow to the Buddha? Because we admire the Buddha's qualities. And when we bow to the Buddha, what we're really doing is opening ourselves up to generate those qualities ourselves, because we're showing respect for those qualities. So similarly, when we do posada, there's areas where we bow to each other and certain people bow to other people. And you do it because that's, those people have been working on their minds longer and you want to show respect for that and think, oh, I can become more like those people and they can support me and help me and counsel me, as I'm growing in the Dharma. Okay. Now, granted, some people don't want to be supported and counseled and encouraged. They want to just, leave me alone. I'll do everything myself. Don't give me any feedback, good feedback or bad feedback. Those people, what to do? They're going to have a problem. Yeah? So I don't really know what to say, but, to really cultivate that attitude of showing respect. Because the people who ordain, let's face it, if you ordain, you are not the standard run-of-the-mill neurotic person in society. You have your own brand of neurosis. Because if you ordain, you have to be very independent-minded, because in Asia, it's very different than in Asia. In Asia, if you ordain, people give you offerings, people respect you, very often, not always. Many families don't approve, but many families are very happy that their child's ordained. If you ordain in the West, your family thinks you're kind of nutty. Your friends think you're kind of nutty. Society thinks that you're a Hare Krishna. To do this and to give up everything that Western culture is telling us we need to be and do and have, it requires a certain degree of independence, of not following along. Okay, and so that, and a certain degree of stubbornness. Okay, so we can use our stubbornness and independence in a good way, but we also bring it into the monastery where sometimes it comes out in a way that is really not so helpful. Okay, and so that kind of use of our stubbornness and independence we really have to work with. But still, regarding the other people, they may be stubborn and independent, but we have to respect, but that's also what got them into robes and gave them the courage to do what they're doing. Yeah? Otherwise, they would be, wearing 5-inch heels and stylish clothes and drying their hair. Well, drying it, yeah, and dyeing it. And, going to work in a corner office, or, the guys would be out, playing golf. What a boring sport, my goodness. My dad was a golfer. That's one of the most boring ones. But that's where you close all your business deals. So you go out and, this little ball, and your whole life is conditioned by this little ball, And how far you can hit it, and where the little ball goes, and it's crazy, Of course, then there's the bigger balls, the basketball, the football, and like people go totally nuts over that. The baseball, Yeah. I mean, people just, they get, their lives, there's so much emotion about what happens to a ball. Yeah. It's totally crazy. My nephew, played football, and this was a big thing in the family, and it's like, and then my niece played golf, and so the family wanted, they hoped that the nephew would go get a college, a scholarship to college for football, and the niece would get a college scholarship for golf. And it's like, we have to talk about balls so much. Yeah, I was never interested in that. So, so we're changing. How did I get off on that? Anyway, we develop respect for the stubbornness that different monastics have, even, if because when they use it in a good way, okay? Okay, then we also spend time trying to cultivate a monastic mind. And so the verse that you say, in the morning at the end of meditation, it's really important to, think about these verses. Because one of the qualities we want to have as a monastic is humility. Yeah. Arrogance is not becoming in a monastic. Walking in and, I'm a monastic, so I'm better than you, or, I've been to such and such teachings, or I've done this, or, that's not at all becoming. Yeah, we should be very humble. And you look at His Holiness and how much His Holiness has changed the office of the Dalai Lama. When he was little, if you look at the old pictures, he's, because as a kid, you do what the adults tell you. He was all dressed in brocade. Up, down, and across, full of brocade, fancy hats, special shoes. And what?
Sitting on a literal throne.
Yeah, his throne was enormous. People were taught that you don't look him in the eye. And what did His Holiness do? He went back to wearing ordinary monk's robes. He doesn't like the brocade kind of stuff. Now he has to sit on big thrones for initiations, but whenever he can in other situations, also now because his knees hurt, then he just sits on a regular chair or whatever. Yeah. And you look at His Holiness, and he's just humble. He's not all full of himself. Okay? And so this is, I think, an example for us. One of my teachers, Geshe Topten, was one of the meditators in the huts above Dharamsala, the ones really high up. And boy, I mean, Geshe-la, he was a very high practitioner, but you would never know it from looking at him. Yeah, he had a few whiskers coming out here, and his hair, and he was gray and slouched, and his socks were always falling down. His robes were always old. He was always wearing old beat-up shoes. When I was the SPC in Italy, when he came to there, and of course we fixed up the Valletta really nice and served him on china dishes and silverware. And the first day he said, "Get rid of this stuff and bring me plastic plates." We made a nice big throne for him. First day giving teachings, he took the cushion off the throne and put it on the floor. Okay? And this was, how he was. And such a good example. And nobody would know that the depth of his practice. It wasn't noticeable from outside. Genlam Rinpa, who you commented on, somebody brought him up yesterday. Was it you? Somebody did. Yeah. So Genlam Rinpa, similar, very humble. You would never know that he had actualized, that he attained serenity and so on. Okay? So we should not be falsely humble. We should be genuinely humble. There's some people who make a show of being humble. That doesn't go over so well, but we should be genuinely humble. Okay? And be modest. Okay? We don't go around singing our own praises. Oh, His Holiness's brother, Nari Rinpoche, he has the greatest sense of humor. And I heard this story about him. He was talking to somebody, probably a Westerner, I don't know. And this person was singing their own praises and, trying to impress Rinpoche with how great he was. And then Rinpoche said, "Have you taken up music?" And the guy said, "No, why?" And Rinpoche said, "Because you really toot your own horn very well." So we should be low key. Okay, so we should have genuine self-confidence without being arrogant, because self-confidence and arrogance are two different things. When we don't believe in ourselves, that's when we have the show of being arrogant, when we toot our own horn. When we have genuine self-confidence, we don't need to do that. Thurka Rinpoche, when he was very small, he said to me, if I'm a good cook, I don't need to tell people I'm a good cook. I just cook and they'll see for themselves. So similarly, as a monastic, we don't need to tell people, "Oh, I'm good at this, I'm good at that." We just do what we're doing, and if we have any ability, it comes out. Yeah, and it doesn't matter, whether other people praise us or any of this kind of stuff. Okay, another quality we need to develop in monastic mind is the ability to listen to others and to hear them with our hearts. Okay, and this can be difficult because many of us, we listen and we interrupt. Okay, we listen and we judge. We listen and we distract. So it's really a talent of learning how to listen with our hearts. Okay. Now, there are some things that when you discuss how to do them, we have to keep the conversation moving. Okay. So we can't just go into somebody's emotional this or emotional that. It's not, if you have a planning meeting to do something, that's not the time for stopping the meeting because somebody else is having an emotional meltdown, okay? But there are other times when we have to listen with our heart to these people, in an appropriate setting where they can really talk about what they need to talk about and find somebody who is happy to hear them out. Okay, but we also have to remember that being Sangha members, when people, open up to us, not to judge, to practice reflective listening where we let them, we rephrase what they've said to make sure that we've understood them correctly, but we don't pamper. We don't pamper. We don't go, "Poor you. Other people are mistreating you." We acknowledge their experience. And some people have gone through very painful experiences. We acknowledge it, we empathize, but we don't pamper. And we don't take sides. If somebody comes to talk to us because they're mad at somebody else, we don't take sides and say, "Yeah, you're really right. That person's so intolerant." You know, we say, it sounds like you're upset and you have a problem with your anger. So we deal with the person in a dharma way instead of taking sides in their disputes with other people. Yeah. And this is quite important because if we take sides, if somebody else is having trouble with somebody else, you know, if person A is having trouble with person B and person A comes, you know, or they're both having trouble with each other, person A comes to me to complain about person B. If I take the side of person A and say, you know, person B, yeah, they're just blah, 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 you know, then I reinforce person A's anger and sense of entitlement and feeling of being misunderstood and so on. And I actually keep the dispute going by taking sides in it, you know. And then it really can very easily lead to having factions in a community, you know. I side with person A, somebody else sides with person B, then person C gets involved and a couple of people side with person C, and then you have the White House. Okay? We do not need to recreate the White House at the monastery. You know, I mean, this is what you read about. I mean, the White House is total turmoil. It's a circus. We do not need to do that here and have factions. Okay? So if somebody else is having trouble relating to, if A is having trouble relating to B and B is having trouble relating to A, you know, we acknowledge their difficulties. Yeah. And then we try and, you know, say, well, how else do you think you could look at the situation? Or what are you really needing here? You know, and can you fulfill that need in another way besides depending on that person? Okay. And sometimes you may have to speak to both parties in a dispute. Yeah. But in doing so, we don't take sides because that just, you know, that gets us into a mess as well if we take sides, because then whenever person B attacks person A, we feel like they're attacking us too, you know, because we sided with A. And then, you know, and that, yeah, it's just a mess. So, yeah, so we need to be able to listen to people from our hearts, and discuss things, but without taking sides. Okay, and sometimes these kinds of things, they will come up at posada. You know, sometimes people themselves will admit if they're being arrogant or stubborn or uncooperative, and at posada time they will admit it and they will apologize to the community. Other times, then, you know, the community needs to talk about it and how to help that person because the person's really stuck in their own mind. Yeah. But the idea is always to help and not to judge, not to harm. Okay. Then another quality as a monastic, we need to cultivate the ability to tolerate different ideas. You know, because we get so attached to our ideas, how things should be done. Yeah. And, you know, we come in here, we have our own ideas of how the monastery should be run. Yeah. And the people who are in charge of doing certain tasks are not making the decisions according to the criteria we think are important. And they aren't acting the way we think they should act. And they aren't doing what we think they should do, you know, because they have different ideas and different priorities. Yeah. You know, I can't endure that. You know, or we're having a meeting and people have different ideas. You know, we have a problem. How do we solve this problem? You know, person A says this, person B says this, person C says this. We identify with our ideas, and when somebody doesn't agree with our ideas, we feel like we're being personally criticized. If you don't like my idea, you don't like me. Yeah? And if you don't agree that in the kitchen, this is where we put, these kinds of serving things, then, you don't like me. You're criticizing me. Okay? And then different ideas, how we make policies. Everybody has their own idea. Do we have 2 weeks off a year? Can you take 1 week and 6 days 1 year? Or actually, you usually want to take 2 weeks plus another week borrowed from the year ahead. So you can take 3 weeks off this year, and then you'll give up a week next year. But of course, by that time, both you and they have forgotten it. And you've hoped they've forgotten it. And, so there's all this kind of stuff. And, we have to be able to hear different ideas and tolerate different ideas. And even in the Dharma, yeah. I mean, sometimes we come to the Dharma and we think there's got to be one right answer to this question. And often because we've learned from a teacher who follows, is in a certain monastery, who follows a certain yigcha, and if Jetsunpa said this is the right view, and it's the only view. But Panchen Sonam Drakpa has a different view, and I studied with the Lama who went along with Panchen Sonam Drakpa, and that's the right answer. It's not your answer; it's my answer. And then you have somebody who's following Jamyang Shepa, and Jamyang Shepa, he has the right answers. That Jeffrey likes him, so I'm a Jeffrey fan. I do everything Jamyang Shepa way. And we can't tolerate difference of views within the Dharma. Okay? So if we're going to survive in a monastery, we have to learn to tolerate different views on everything. Okay? Yeah. I think we should put the stamps upside down on the envelope. I think we should put the stamps right side up on the envelope. Okay. Another thing that we have to do is cultivate an attitude of not being self-indulgent. Yeah, because self-indulgence is not going to help us fulfill our own spiritual needs. We need to rest when we're exhausted. We need to take a break when we've been concentrating on something hard. But that is very different than being self-indulgent. Okay. And so some people, out of fear of being self-indulgent, they don't take care of their own health, or they don't rest when they need to, or take a break when they need to. So again, it's the usual thing of either we're self-indulgent, and I offered service for an hour today and I'm exhausted, and every day that's about the only amount of offering service I can do, and then I really need to go do what I want to do. We either go to that extreme, or we become workaholics. So again, it's very important to learn how to keep ourselves balanced. Yeah. And when we need help, to ask for help. We are not a failure when we ask for help. When other people ask for help, to give them the help they need. When we're tired, when we're sick, take care of our body. When our mind is tight, take a break. Tell the community I need to take a walk, or I need the afternoon off because my afflictions are going bananas today. So we need to learn how to become balanced individuals. And this is quite important. And I kind of on a daily basis, I think this is one of my priorities is to keep myself balanced. Because if I get myself out of balance, then I can't do anything in a productive way, you know. I can't study, I can't meditate, I can't do anything, you know. Another thing that is important is to question our own thoughts and perceptions. So don't believe everything you think. Don't believe the way things appear to you. Question them. Yeah. When you form judgments about people, despite the talk I gave, the motivation I gave, question your judgments. When you start judging yourself, question your judgments of yourself. Yeah. When you think that so-and-so said this and that, ask them if they really said that. If you think such and such was in an email, go back and read the email and see if that's what was said in the email. Okay? So to question our perceptions instead of thinking our interpretation is the only right way to interpret something. Yeah?
Our Geshe-la at the center, he is always very much propagating watching television in with a dharmic view. He says you can use watching television very well. You know, he says he looks at all these, he looks at movies and news, and he says, yeah, that's fine if you see the suffering of these sentient beings there, and if you see, how,
So
samsara is.
yeah,
What do you think about it?
if you are well trained and your mind is under control, that's true. If you are not well trained and your mind is not under control, you watch about a minute and a half with the Dharma vision, and then you get involved in what the advertisers in Hollywood want you to get involved in. Yeah, that's what I think.
Venerable, what's a good way to shake yourself out of a humorless attitude? When there's just no humor and there's just disdain. How do you shake yourself out of that? What are some ways that you use?
The ways I use is I just look at I look at the content of the thought, and it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that I have to laugh. And I remember, what I frequently do to renew the humor is I remember the instant, after I got through my trial by fire in Italy, and I went to do retreat. And I was, in Tushita, and I was sitting alone in my little cabin, and, look what a good meditator I am. I'm sure Rinpoche has clairvoyant powers, and he's seeing what a good meditator I am, how I'm really doing this practice so well. And then I realized what I was thinking, and I just cracked up laughing, because it was so ridiculous, totally 100% ridiculous. And so I had to laugh. So I remember that thing, and then I say, I got to apply it now too, because when I get myself all tangled up in these judgments, the thoughts are, if I really look at the content of that judging thought, it's so ridiculous, that you have to laugh. Yeah. Do you have ridiculous thoughts? Yeah, ridiculous fantasies. Yeah. So just laugh at them.
I believe I'm going to share this, but now it's too late. So here's a ridiculous thought that I had when I had written Lama Zopa Rinpoche and asking for his blessings to be ordained. I waited 4 months for a reply, and the reply came back, and I was just, really, that 4 months was torture. But anyway, so the reply came back, and it said, Rinpoche thinks it would be very good for you to ordain. And I was so puffed up about this, and I was thinking, Rinpoche, he thinks I'll be a great nun. He thinks I'll be a wonderful nun. And I was completely convinced of this. And I even told a dear Dharma friend, he said it would be very good. Not just good, but very good. So since I've been here at the Abbey, what dawned on me one day in meditation was, yeah, I don't think he meant that. I think what he meant was, young lady, it would be very good if you ordain. You need structure, you need discipline, you need this. It would be very good if you ordain. And then when the light bulb went on, I had to just crack up. It was so ridiculous, but a little self-cherishing. Yeah, I had a ridiculous thought.
Good. So that's a very good example, of how to learn to laugh at us, and to laugh at the opposite. Can you imagine Rinpoche sitting there going, young lady, you need to ordain.